about banking or banking legislation? And the answer to that question is provided by Vanderlip himself in the same article. He said, "If it were to be exposed publicly that our particular group had got together and written a banking bill, that bill would have no chance whatever of passage by Congress. Why not? Because the purpose of the bill was to break the grip of the money trust. And ladies and gentlemen, it was written by the money trust. It's as simple as that. Had that fact been known from the very beginning, the public would never have accepted it as a means of breaking the grip over the money trust. And we would never have had a Federal Reserve System because the scam would have been exposed from the beginning. This was like having the fox build the hen house and install the security system." So there is a primary reason for the secrecy. And it's a fact that most Americans have not even considered, that there might have been some kind of deception, massive deception, at the very inception of the Federal Reserve System, and for a very good reason. But there's more to it than that, a lot more than that. Consider the composition of this group and the financial powers they represented. Is there anything strange about that mixture? Here we had the Rockefellers, we had the Morgans, Kuhn, Loeb and Company, the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, all in one room for 9 days plus 2 days on the train, coming to an agreement. What's going on here? Anything strange about that mixture? Well, ladies and gentlemen, these were competitors. These were the giants in the field which prior to this period had been beating their heads against each other for dominance in the marketplace, for dominance in the financial markets of the world, not only New York, but Paris and London, everywhere. Competitors. This is extremely significant because it happened at precisely that point of American history when business was undergoing a major ideological transition. Prior to this period, America had grown and prospered and surpassed all the countries of Europe as an industrial and economic power because it adhered to the principle of free enterprise competition. And it was in this period that a rapid transition was taking place to the concept of monopoly and cartel. Going back, in fact, to the old world concept which had held Europe back for all these years. Monopolies and cartels were becoming the order of the day in America. It was John D. Rockefeller I who said it. He said, "Competition is a sin." He believed it. All of his biographers quote him on that one, by the way. And he and others of these industrialists of the period were devoting all of their time to the elimination of competition. They did not believe in free enterprise competition at all. They knew that the road to riches and power was through the elimination of their competition. And if they couldn't beat their competition out, then they tried to buy them up. If that didn't work, they joined with them in a shared monopoly, and that is a cartel, a shared monopoly. Perhaps I should define that word in more detail so at least you'll know what I'm talking about when I use the word. A cartel is a group of independently owned businesses which come together for the purpose of reducing or eliminating competition between themselves so that they can enhance their profit margins or secure their position in the marketplace. And they do this by price fixing. We won't compete on price. Or they divide up geographical markets or products and services. For example, if we were forming a cartel here, I might say, well, I get the north and you get the south. We won't compete. Or I might insist that I get to produce the gizmo, but you can produce the widget. And we won't compete. Or we'll share patents and processes. We won't compete. And every time we agree to eliminate one area of competition between ourselves, we move closer and closer together until finally we are as one industry insofar as the marketplace is concerned, even though our component parts are independently owned. And that is a cartel. And so that enhances our profits. We can get more for our products and services than we could in the arena of free enterprise competition. And of course, the other side of that coin is that the public pays more for those products or services than they would otherwise. And that is just as true in a banking cartel as it is in any other kind of cartel. And the amazing fact emerges that when you study this period, that for the 15 years before the meeting on Jekyll Island, these groupings of which we're speaking had come together increasingly in joint ventures. They were learning how to avoid competition between themselves. They knew they couldn't knock each other out. They had tried that. It was too costly. Now it was time to come together. And what happened on Jekyll Island is that they formed a banking cartel, and they called it the Federal Reserve System. An amazing fact that all these years we've had something which most people have thought was a government operation of some kind or another. We were told it was a creation to protect the people, to stabilize the economy, and it's a cartel. And the purpose of a cartel is to enhance the profit structure of the members of the cartel. Period. That's the second amazing discovery, to be learned if we understand and analyze what happened on Jekyll Island back in 1910. But there's a third element, which is perhaps even the most important of all, and that is that this cartel went into partnership with the government. Well, cartels often do that to enforce their cartel agreements, but in this case they did it in spades. Now, in any partnership, there has to be a payoff. There has to be some benefit to the partners, otherwise they won't go into the partnership, or if they go into it, they won't stay in it for very long. So it's a legitimate question for us to ask, what is the payoff? What's the benefit to these partners? Let's find out why the government is in this partnership, and then we'll find out why the banking cartel is in it. And in order to find out what the payoff is, we'll have to examine how the Federal Reserve System creates money, because that's the key. Now, if you're not familiar with how money is created in America, this is going to be really some experience to go through this. For the first time, you're going to shake your heads and say, I don't believe this. I call it the Mandrake mechanism, after that 1940s comic book character, Mandrake the Magician. Could create something out of nothing, wave his cape, and it was back into the void again. That's the Federal Reserve System. Now, let's take this and break this down. I need to warn you in advance, however, that you shouldn't try and make sense out of this. Okay? Because you'll blow a fuse if you think this makes sense. Just remember, this is your plain old American scam that we're talking about here. It's that simple. And I'm going to strip away all of the banker terminology and all the accounting terminology and use just plain old plodding English to make it comprehensible. In spite of that, however, I want you to know that everything I'm going to tell you from a technical point of view is 100% accurate, in spite of the simplicity of the language. Okay, with that by way of preliminary, let's get right to the Mandrake mechanism itself. It starts with the government side of the partnership.